So we made it to the book of Romans, and you're probably already feeling like this is harder work than it was when we read the Gospels and we read the book of Acts, because it's much denser. I don't know if you remember, but back in Acts chapter 20, Paul was giving a talk, and while he was preaching, this guy fell asleep and fell out of a window and died. And when I started to read the book of Romans, I thought, I can understand why somebody died halfway through one of Paul's talks. This is hard work. And it's almost as if Paul is just, the words are tumbling out of his mouth. He's got so much to say. And so one of the things that means is when we're reading it, it can be hard to really see the wood for the trees. It's like, what is Paul going on about? What is he saying? And so just by way of introduction to the book, it's helpful to stand back and remember a couple of things. Number one, whenever we read the Bible, there'll be bits that we don't understand. That's normal and that's to be expected. And we want to work hard to try and understand those bits. But also, just when we're doing our daily Bible reading, something that can be helpful, something I try and put into practice anyway, is concentrating on the bits that I do understand. You know what, I might read a whole chapter of Romans and some of it just goes over my head, but there are other bits that's like, I do get kind of what he's saying here. And I just want to meditate on that and dwell on that. And then there maybe is another time and a place for digging into some of the bits that are a bit harder work. That's the first thing. Second thing to appreciate is that Paul is writing a letter. And so it's kind of like reading, one half of somebody's emails or something. You don't know what's been said to him. But what we do know about the letter to the Romans is that he was introducing himself to a church in Rome, the heart of the empire at that time, the city that ruled the world, as it were. And he didn't start the church that he's writing to, which is unusual because a lot of the churches that he wrote his letters to, he actually had been there and he'd either started it or he knew the people that he was writing to. And so in this one, it's kind of he's introducing himself. And what he's doing as a kind of the main thing in his letter is he's telling them about the gospel of Jesus Christ. He's kind of saying, this is the gospel that I have been teaching, the gospel of Jesus. And he's letting them know, it's not really the headlines because there's so much dense theology in there, but he's letting them know what it's all about. And the big headline is, we are saved because of what God has done, because of the way that God has revealed himself in the person of Jesus. And so you may notice as you're reading it that there's a whole load of stuff about Jews and Gentiles. What Paul is saying really to both groups, the Jews, he's saying, we're not saved by the law and we're not saved by circumcision. We're saved by putting our trust in Jesus Christ. And to the Gentiles, he's saying, you guys are saved too by putting your trust in Jesus Christ, not by anything that you do. And so the consequences of that are, number one, we want to accept each other, Jew and Gentile. Gentile just means non-Jew. We want to accept one another and love one another. Secondly, and probably more relevant for us today, is that we've got no grounds for boasting about anything. We're saved not because of anything we've done, but because of believing in Jesus. And this is such a key point that so many of us, I think, miss. You know, when we eventually arrive in the next life, whatever that looks like, when God makes heaven and earth new, it's not going to be populated with good people. So many people think that the way you get to heaven, as you understand it, is by being good. No, heaven is going to be full of very, 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 very bad people, but people who have been forgiven, people who have trusted in Jesus. And because of what Jesus has done, they become part of the people of God and they get saved. And it's kind of, Paul puts it in a much more simple way when he's asked the question in Acts chapter 16 by the jailer who rushes in after the earthquake in Philippi and says, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" And Paul's response to him is, "Believe in the name of Jesus and you'll be saved." That's kind of what Romans is. This is who Jesus is. This is who God is. This is what he's done. As you believe in him, just by virtue of the fact that you're putting your trust in this person, you receive the gift of salvation. And then in Romans 12, he kind of starts to unpack a little bit of the implications of that for us, which a huge one is, he says, we're to live as living sacrifices for the one who gave, as it were, the ultimate sacrifice for us. It's going to be rich, it's going to be dense, but it's going to be worth it. Let's go for it.